Is this the Anglers Association here? Yeah. Anybody know how these things work? How does this work? Energy angling. It might be a bit of a stretch, but here we go. So tonight, it's the notion of, like I say, maybe it's a little bit of a stretch, but how to catch some energy savings. But I do have a trivia question for you. Way back when a book on fishing called The Complete Angler was written, when do you think this book was written? Any guesses? 1950. 1950. Other guesses? The Complete Angler. Of course, it's spelled funny because it was a Brit, an Englishman who wrote it. We need one more guess. 1897. 1653. So they were interested in fishing way back when. And personally, I thought that everybody had heard of this fishing book called The Complete Angler because, people have taken a spin off of it in various ways, the complete this and the complete that. But it is a classic, and it's been around for a long time. And so we're kind of obviously going to play on the notion of catching some savings. I have a couple of objectives in the comments that I'm going to make, and we have Ariana Friedlander with the Atmospheric Conservancy who will be talking in the second part about the Community Energy Challenge. Basically, I'd like to explore with you just the kind of the broad sense of how homes use energy, because if you're like me, like many of us, you get a bill from us, the utility, Fort Collins Utilities, and you pay the bill, but maybe you're not exactly sure what it is, why was it so much one month and a different number the next month? We basically kind of want to explore that, because if you have interest in trying to accomplish some savings, it helps to begin to understand, how much is the refrigerator versus the furnace versus this versus that. We're going to look at a couple of tools that you can do a survey. Take this inventory sheet home and survey at your home, and we think that it's useful to help you just pin down, what's being used in different rooms of the house, and what does it all add up to, and does it actually match? Hopefully, there's some match to what you're actually being billed. It's an estimating tool. It's just and only that, but we think it's a way to help identify different areas of use. We're then going to talk a little bit about some of the utility and cities' rebate and incentive programs that match in with, if you're trying to look for opportunities to reduce your energy use and utility bills. We're going to try to talk a little bit about, some of the myths, some of the scams that are out there with respect to energy saving devices. And then also the notion of getting a little more involved in the community side of it with this Community Energy Challenge. I'd like to start, though, if you'll bear with me, and just say, if you think of questions that you have about energy saving measures you've thought about for your home, and you wonder is it a worthwhile thing to do or not, or if you've heard of something that you think sounds sort of suspicious, are there any, I'm going to call it home energy puzzles that we might try to talk about this evening at some point that come to mind? Okay, so a TV and a power strip. Any others? A couple. So I'm going to call it the high performance furnace filters versus, I guess, sort of the standard. And then your question about gas-fired furnaces or gas-fired fireplaces, I mean?
Yeah, just leaving the pilot light on or turned off in the summer, or the use of the actual fireplace to boil or heat as opposed to the furnace.
So just the use of a gas fireplace versus furnace and so forth.
Could you turn
The pilot light, right? Okay.
turn that off in the summertime?
Vacuum the water heater.
Wrapping.
Wrapping.
Oh,
Huh?
we should not be vacuuming it?
No, it's the refrigerator coil you're supposed to vacuum, not the water heater. Right? Outlet seals. Do they help? Are they any good?
How about recovery period for the extra attic insulation?
Right? I'm going to paraphrase that as, what's the payback on attic insulation? And, with a rebate, considering the rebates, how does that play? Let's take one more. Instant on hot water versus the conventional kind of tank and a well-insulated tank.
Yeah, if you're using an electric to do it.
Okay, and one more. I think the gentleman over here.
During the winter time.
Electric light during heating season. Well, it just seems to me that, we all have kind of these questions, and to be honest, I'm not sure some of these that the answer that I may have to give you tonight is, I'll be getting back to you on that. I mean, we wanted to answer all of these, but for example, I'm not so sure about that I can give you the story on the pressure drop, if you will, across a high performance filter versus the standard. But I'd like to come back to these after we've gone through some of the, general information about homes and energy. So I'm hoping to be able to go through the discussion of energy and incentive opportunities, that sort of thing, and then maybe be coming back to your questions at the end of the first half, towards the end of the first hour here. And then Ariana will be jumping in on this, telling you about what the Community Energy Challenge is all about. So, we use energy in our homes, we use energy in our businesses, and no mystery, we're trying to get things accomplished. We do what we do in our homes, for example, because we're doing things that we choose to do. And, the message, I think, is not don't do what you want to be doing in your home and your residence, but there may be a misspelled word up there. There may be ways to do the things you want to do a little more efficiently and save a little bit. And when sometimes those things, those small little things that you can do add up, and eventually you realize, hey, my utility bill actually is a little bit lower than it was. I work at Fort Collins Utilities in the Energy Services Group and started there about 5.5 years ago. And of course, one thing being that we're all concentrating on energy work and such, I can say I've noticed that my utility bill for my apartment that I live in has gone down. If I look at 4 years ago versus recently, just the little things that you do eventually change out maybe a higher performance light bulb for an incandescent in enough places and things of that sort. So you can see a difference. Are there, any big lunkers, to use the angling metaphor? Any, things that all of us could do that's just going to be the big energy saver? Yeah, that's hard to come by. It really does end up being a combination of a lot of little things that you can do. And there are some things you can do that really aren't all that effective, and so we'll try to highlight that. But it can add up. So there's also some scams and whatnot that are out there. They're pretty easy to identify. The old story, if it's too good to be true, it probably is pretty much the case. But there are some things about generating power from the Earth's magnetic field and so forth and so on that are pretty far out and interesting, but aren't going to reduce your utility bill all that much. Let me quickly go through to just some basics on the terminology that you see on your utility bill, both your gas bill and electric bill. In the United States, the unit of thermal energy, like as in the thermal content of natural gas, is a so-called British thermal unit, or BTU. And what you'll see on your utility bill are units of 100,000 BTUs called a therm. So more than likely you'll see on your utility bill it says 20 therms or 50 therms, or what you use that month in a month's time. For electricity, we use the unit of energy, kilowatt hour, which is abbreviated kWh. And they're both dealing with energy, so there is sort of an equivalence. About a little over 3,000 BTUs equals 1 kilowatt hour. How much energy is a BTU? It's about the amount of heat given off when you light a match. So a household furnace, when it's running at peak capacity, is maybe 50,000 BTUs per hour, so you're lighting 50,000 matches every hour when your furnace is running. One thing that can be a little confusing that we in the electric utility industry speak of is so-called energy demand or peak demand. The unit of energy is a kilowatt hour, but the rate at which you're using energy is a kilowatt. And one way to think of it is the difference between your speed in your car and a speedometer versus the distance that you've gone, which is registered by the odometer. So kilowatt hours are like distance. It's the quantity that you've accumulated, but a kilowatt is an indication of how rapidly you're using energy. A hairdryer uses electricity at over 1 kilowatt at a rate of 1 kilowatt. So if you ran your hairdryer for an hour, you'd use a kilowatt hour of electricity. Or if you ran 10 100-watt light bulbs for an hour, you'd use a kilowatt hour of electricity. If you used a 50-watt light bulb, 10 of them for an hour, you'd only use half a kilowatt hour. But it is, if you hadn't heard the term demand, rate of demand or kilowatts, that's one thing to be aware that there is, a kilowatt is not the same thing as a kilowatt hour. It's rate or power consumption versus a quantity of energy use. So let's talk a little bit about, at some point we may be wanting to talk about cost of energy. Right now, natural gas, it depends on how much you use in a month, but as a general number, it's about 75 cents per therm, and 10 times that is a million BTUs. A therm is 100,000, 10 times that is a million. A lot of people will use the unit of energy of a million BTUs, so that's equivalent to $7.50 per million. Electricity from the city of Fort Collins now, in round numbers, is about 8 cents a kilowatt hour. And if you convert that to a million BTUs, you can see that on a thermal basis, when you're buying a million BTUs of heat, it's pricier if you're paying with electricity, burning or heating with electricity. There are some other things that come to bear, though, and we can give one example, which is your household furnace. There's a certain efficiency of using the heat effectively with a gas furnace. These days, they're typically 80 or 90% efficient. So to get 1 BTU of useful heat out of your furnace, you have to put a little bit more than that in. And so that means that the price of useful BTUs is a little higher. An electric resistance heater, like a space heater or baseboard heating, generally every kilowatt hour that goes in gives a kilowatt hour of heat out for the most part. And there are refrigeration cycle devices called heat pumps, and some of you may be familiar with these, and also what are called ground source heat pumps, where they basically take advantage of the heat that's in the air or in the ground, boost its temperature, and you can actually deliver twice as many, on average, let's say, twice as many BTUs to heat a home as the kilowatt hours going into that system. So if you translate that to a cost per delivered BTU, The gas goes from 750 up to a number like 9. Electricity is still 20, because it's 100% conversion, is something like 23 million or $23 per million. And a heat pump, because of its a little bit higher efficiency, you know, the cost to deliver heat that way is back in the ballpark of what natural gas is. So it's just to point out that as you think about, you know, how you're using energy, the efficiency of the process is also a factor as to how much it's costing you to get something done. So what's typical of energy use in a home? Well, that's actually not a very good question, because townhomes, single-family residences, all residences tend to have a little bit different characteristic, and you as the occupant, as the owner, also do things differently from one household to another. But in general, you know, if you look at the energy pie, this is a national statistic. In general, across quite a range of climates and all, you know, roughly half or a little less than half is often used for heating and cooling, and then all the other uses in the home, appliances, refrigeration, and so forth. The heating and cooling part is more dependent on how leaky your home is, or not. The appliances and electric use, lighting and that sort of thing, that's more dependent on you, the occupant, you know, what you're doing in that house. In general, things that you choose to be doing can affect this half of the pie, and the other half is where you have to tighten the home with insulation and that sort of thing. There's been a trend in the United States over recent decades of homes getting larger. I think we've all observed that. 1950s, a 1,000 square foot home would be typical, and now it's more like 2,400 square feet. Homes are bigger. There's more stuff in them, more electric devices. So generally, energy use has been going up. Now, we at Utilities have tried to look at what affects our peak load, and this is the results of a study. Hey, maybe I can actually use this rod for something here instead of the electric pointer. This is back to old school, I guess. We've looked at and tried to analyze what contributes to the heating load in an old sort of pre-1970s home versus mid-70s, 2000, and this is a new construction over here. And the main thing to just take from this is that there has been a trend as the construction practices have changed of homes tightening up. The load imposed by leaky walls, like uninsulated walls in much older homes, it's a big part of the load, and that's been brought down quite a lot with better and thicker construction details. Infiltration is uncontrolled leakage of air through the home. That's sort of stayed a bit of an issue, but there has been a trend of homes tightening up. So if you're in a newer home, on balance, there's going to be a lower part of your bill spent annually on heating and such. And the same sort of thing is true on the cooling side. The thing to point out here is this big piece that stays on the scene all the way to new construction are what the heat gain and heat gains and loss from windows. So on one hand, you've got homes getting bigger, you've got homes getting tighter, but here's sort of the general national trend from late 70s to more recently, at least for electric consumption. You can see this gray wedge is sort of progressively getting a little bigger. We're all just using have bigger and more appliances. And there's been also sort of a trend towards a little more air conditioning use. And Fort Collins, we've certainly seen that in the last couple of decades. And in fact, this is our own local data, kind of the trend of local population versus the total energy that this community is using, at least electricity. And you can see that the energy use is going up a little faster than population. It means each of us are using a little more than maybe a generation ago, or that sort of thing. So with these trends, maybe what you see in your own homes, what do you do? Where do you start to kind of understand how your home is using energy, and maybe based on what you understand, decide that there are some things you can do that will yield meaningful savings. So there are several things we'll talk about fairly quickly here. A place to start is your utility bill, and we'll talk a bit about that. We're going to go through an example of this inventory that we're going to encourage you to take home and do yourself as a way to get a handle on how you're using energy. And then there are also devices that some that you can borrow from us at utilities, or you can purchase for yourself. Probably most of you have seen this sort of a gizmo, the Kilowatt, which is an appliance meter. It plugs in the wall, your appliance plugs into it, and it tells you for that one device what it's using in a given instant, and it totals. How many of you have seen these or know what they're about? Most of you, many of you. So these are available and can be rented from, checked out from both city libraries and from Fort Collins Utilities. Then there are other devices, and this just happens to be the display unit for a device that, bear with me a second, has a gizmo like this. There are different ways that this can be done, but this particular product, this goes on your meter on your house, and the little sensor there watches the dial go around and just counts the number, how fast it's going around and how many times. But it transmits wirelessly to this device in the house. So this is what you would call a whole house meter, because it's monitoring the whole house, not just a single outlet. And there are other variations of this kind of product. We'll talk a little bit more about it later. But with this sort of thing, you can say, well, my refrigerator just turned on. How much did the usage jump up then, and how much does it go down? Oh, I just turned my television on. Oh, that's how much it used. You don't have to go around to each and every appliance and device to figure out what they're using. But if this survey that we go through raises some questions, well, is this really true? I mean, the numbers from the survey are just kind of average wattages and that sort of thing for the various devices that we've listed there. What's your refrigerator actually using compared to our guess? That's where these measurement devices can be of some help. And we'll talk a bit more later about the price of these things and that sort of thing. So you got your utility bill, comes to you every month. A couple years ago, one of my colleagues put together, I think, a very good walkthrough of how to interpret the information in your utility bill. It's up and at the REPS website now, and you can download that as a file that you can look at. But I encourage you to take a look at this presentation about taking control, because it's a good step-by-step way to look at what your utility bill tells you. First of all, if you can determine your average use per month, this is the sort of pattern for the city of Fort Collins in terms of if you're an average person, an average household, you'll use somewhere around 700 kilowatt hours per month. That's what this, and if you use only 500 or so, that says that you're kind of, you're in the group that where there's 3/4 of folks using a little, using more than you. If you're using closer to 1,000 kilowatt hours a month, then you're getting close to the upper 25% of households. And this is, well, this data is 2008. It's 2 or 3 years old. I think the city average has crept up a little bit. It may be more like 750 now instead of around a little below 700. But this is a first indication of where your household sits relative to typical houses here in Fort Collins. And you can get this by just coming up with average monthly kilowatt hours, and you'll get that from your bill. The Fort Collins bill has the previous 12 months printed. This is just sort of a sample, but look for this billing history, and that's where you can get that average usage number to go. And this this tool we're going to talk about has that curve that you can find where your household use is. There was a question? Well, I think the current state of things for Fort Collins Utilities is we don't yet have that online where you can look up your account information and see a graph in kind of as each month goes by. What I know is that our customer service group is moving to get that sort of capability in place, online billing, and along with online billing that you can look up your history and see it plotted. But they're not there yet, I don't think. Is anyone here getting what the home energy reports? The city is running a pilot program of a printed home energy report that comes, it's not going to all customers, it's to roughly half of the customers because it is a pilot program. And it does show your accounts, your household's monthly trend, and also shows it relative to similar sized homes, so you have a sense. It's a little finer.
It still only shows 1 year, so you can't.
Yeah, it is just 1 year. The thing I would say is we might get inundated and not be able to respond, but we at utilities, like in energy services, if you call us, we'd be happy to. We can work up those kind of graphs and share them with you. We're just not. It's not there yet to do it automatically online and whatnot. And most of you are probably aware that over the next few years, the Fort Collins Utilities is moving to replace meters. Basically, there'll be the replacement of almost every residential meter with newer technology. And with that new technology, the sort of thing you're talking about, maybe, well, it is possible. It's just how rapidly it can be implemented and that sort of thing. So the other thing, there are some patterns that you can take out of that 12-month billing history. Like, this is just the notion of plotting each month's energy use. But as soon as you plot that curve, you can see, well, month after month, there's a certain minimum that I'm using in my house. And that's what you might call your base load. And then maybe in the winter, you see, well, it goes up. You got your furnace running, but that tapers off. And maybe because you run window fans and such, you don't have such a big bump in the summer for air conditioning. Other houses might have a bigger bump. But this sort of pattern, which just can come from your 12-month billing, can tell you, well, should I really be paying attention to base load? That's where my opportunities are. Or, going back to the color coding, the previous slide, this would be cooling. So for this household, we've got quite a lot of energy spent in cooling. Maybe there are things to do to tune up the air conditioner or what have you. So your bill, your month-to-month bill, can actually tell you a fair bit about what your household is doing. So we're about to jump into, don't be put off by all of the busyness of this slide, but we're about to jump into this inventory tool or energy survey, and it has multiple pages that I'm going to bring it up on the computer here, and we'll begin to walk through it. It's actually a spreadsheet that you can download, and in fact, just today, in quite timely fashion, that link is there at the REPS website, and you can grab this spreadsheet. It has this tally sheet and these other pages that ultimately you do the tally. You'll see some similarity even with this poor resolution version here of the things you tick off. I have one of those, but not one of those. And then for your household and your survey, it'll give you a summary of how your use breaks down based on what you've entered and some other statistics. And we're about to launch into that just to give you a little orientation. As I said a moment ago, with this survey, it's just typical wattage for, say, a range or a clothes dryer or a television or a digital video recorder. It's just simply what some of the national statistics show is the wattage of these things. What we've done is in this tool is try to capture those, at least a reasonably comprehensive list, so that if you walk from room to room, you have some choice to make that represents what you're seeing. Because we literally do suggest to use this, that you take the sheet home or download this spreadsheet and have it accessible, and make yourself walk from room to room and say, oh, outlet, laptop computer, and really just, sometimes you forget that you have 5 phone chargers. You say, okay, I got a phone charger. Oh, I got 5 phone chargers. Or, just really to be a little more careful about the survey of what's there, and counting lights in a chandelier and so forth. Okay, so there's 6 40-watt chandelier bulbs and so forth and so on, so that you get a fairly good and useful count of the lighting and so forth and so on. If you do that, then I think it can be a fairly good way to get a sense of, well, should I pay attention to lighting, or should I pay attention to my man cave with its 10-foot gigantic television, or where's the energy being used? So you'll see. Is there anyone who wouldn't really have easy access to the internet to grab this spreadsheet? Because the thing to say is, if you take this tally sheet but don't really have easy access to get this spreadsheet, it really makes it more useful to use the computer tool. But we would be happy to take your information and work with you and put it into the tool and send you the results. So for those of you where internet access or what have you is a problem, again, call us and we'd be happy to help. But what you'll see with this spreadsheet tool is multiple tabs to give you some introductory information, the actual inventory page, then the summary results, and some suggestions of, okay, what do you do with the information that you get from this spreadsheet? And I think more recently, an additional tab has been added just today of this sort of streamlined version of the inventory. It's worth mentioning, we've got a number of hardworking folks in energy services, and Michael Authier is in the back, and I'd like him to sort of stand up, raise his hand. Michael is one of our spreadsheet gurus, and he and I worked together to try to create this spreadsheet, because it seemed like we often get phone questions where, how can you help someone break down what's using energy without necessarily having to go and spend a day or a week, putting these monitoring devices on each and everything. So Michael was instrumental in creating this sort of format, and we think with folks we've already had conversations with that it's quite useful. So there's some lead-in information, and you choose the what electric rate applies for you. Some people are on the so-called energy demand rate, others are on the standard energy rate. Then you go through the list of items and just put a count in as you walk from room to room. And then there's basically 3 parts to the summary that will then show you, based on what you've estimated and all, what's the estimated kilowatt hours used for, say, cooling versus general electronics, these categories. Based on what you've provided, what's using the most energy? It sort of ranks them so you can see, well, what should be highest priority to be thinking about. The reality check of whether it's anywhere close to what you're actually being billed for is this summary that says, well, average monthly for this particular example, 700 kilowatt hours a month, or a little over 8,000 a year. Does that match your bill? Hopefully what we found is it's fairly close to within plus or minus 10 or 20% most of the time, maybe better than that. This is an estimate for all of the, what your peak usage at any month might be, if all the typical things running at the same time might be running, and your monthly cost and your annual cost. And the other thing is there is a category to draw attention to of, well, I'll have to look at it in a moment on the spreadsheet, of what the standby loss is, and it's to the question that was raised about whether you should unplug your television, for example. Things do use electricity even when they're allegedly off, and some things more than others. So by going through this tally faithfully, you'll also get an estimate of how much of your energy uses are in that category of standby losses. Some people call it parasitic losses or vampire loads because it's always sucking juice from the outlet. Then there's a section that does have the kind of the pie chart that is a representation of what we were just looking at, and again a tally of the the 5 highest items out of this list that were determined and the lowest. And compared to national averages, whether your pattern is a little below the national numbers or not. And then this again is kind of a creation of that curve that I showed you a minute ago of this citywide pattern for energy use, and where do you fall? Are you right about in the middle? Are you low? Are you high? It's a general indication of how your household's doing. It does effectively, I think, highlight the high energy users. And if this survey doesn't line up with what you're getting billed, it can alert you to, there can be, it's pretty rare, but there can be metering problems, and sometimes this can identify that. It can also alert you the space heater that got left on in the basement or something that somebody forgot about, and your bill was quite a bit higher than indicated maybe by this survey tool. What's going on there, and it might cause you to look a little more closely. And finally, you can say, well, what if I replaced my 30-year-old refrigerator or my 20-year-old refrigerator with a new one? Because there are the items you can pick from here allow you to capture that. This is the spreadsheet tool. And so here's the first page, and down towards the bottom, you can choose whether you have the energy or demand rate. Then you can go to this other inventory tab, and this sheet is a simplified version, but this is what's going on here, that when you enter a quantity, say a gas-heated oven, there are some numbers in here that if you choose to, if you're brave and want to play around with it, you can tinker with some of this information if you think you've got a better estimate. But there's how many hours does it run per day and per month? What's the estimate of the wattage? And so as soon as you put something in this column, you get, for that item, its estimated monthly use, annual use, demand, and what it's adding in an estimation form of what it's adding to your bill. So you can go down through all of these items, and it's just appliances, electronics, pretty much what you see on the sheet in front of you, options for lighting, cooling, so forth and so on, and you simply tally up what you find in your home. And then over on the third tab is the summary of the results that we saw screenshots of. And then some additional information about, just to suggest, if you're wanting to get down to a little more detail, that you can borrow these kilowatt units. And we are going to be talking a little bit about energy audits that are available and that sort of thing. What Utilities is calling our home efficiency program, which is a whole package of incentives, audit and incentives that I'll be getting to here shortly. So I think you get the gist of it. What we're encouraging you to do is grab this spreadsheet from online and talk to us, talk to me afterwards if that's problematic. You can use this as a crib sheet at home to put it on your clipboard and walk room to room, and then you can go back to the spreadsheet and fill in the numbers. If you've got the numbers in front of you, it takes 30 seconds, really. You just sort of quickly go down the list, and then you get back to back to the summary results there. So it's a place to start to inform yourself, how am I using electricity in the home that we hope can be of use to you. You've got some idea of how energy use breaks down from this estimate, and it is just an estimate. And where might you go next? Well, as as the geeky guy is indicating, you can really go crazy with data loggers and such. At a less geeky level, these things actually can be quite informative to, sitting on your kitchen counter saying, why did the power just jump up? Oh, the furnace just turned on, or the refrigerator just turned on. It just makes you a little more aware of what's going on in your home. And sometimes, well, some of you have all electric homes where you have like an electric water heater. That's a big demand. If you're watching one of these things, you'll say, oh, wow, it just went 3 kilowatts or something or more sometimes just for that water heater while it's on. There are 4 or 5 different products of this flavor, and I don't know them intimately, all of them. Some of them do have that sort of thing that they can say your use has gone above a certain level, and if you're trying to be a household that's on what we call a demand rate, part of what they pay for is based on peak demand month to month. And you want to try to keep that peak down, and so these things can help you watch it. There are products that do this sort of thing, that different colored lights come on depending on how high your rate of use is. Most of them rely on a digital display like this, and it's just telling you 10 kW or 15 kW or some such. Well, I guess to jump to the answer of the price of these kinds of things, this type of device that just clamps onto an existing meter outside the house is, I don't know, maybe $100. A simple appliance meter like this, $25 or so. And there are multiple manufacturers of these sorts of appliance meters. Another one that's called Watts Up and some others. They range from, $25, $30, up to maybe $100. These things are a little more involved. This one is at a minimum probably $100. Bear with me a second. There's another product that's been out for a few years that's also a whole house meter called The Energy Detective, or TED for short. This is I think maybe you can see, it's a little sort of triangular display that sits on the countertop. This is an older version of this TED unit. These, I believe, are around $200. There's a more modern version of the TED, which has some additional bells and whistles, and its little display looks like this. So this can sit on a countertop, and obviously it requires a charging station occasionally, but you can walk around the house with this while you turn the light on in the bedroom, and you can be sitting there watching and say, oh, 100 watts. You can see it. It's kind of useful because it is more mobile than some of the older versions that had to stay plugged into the wall and in one place. And so the newer TED, with its wireless display and such, is $300 and up, depending on features. So, under $100 for the appliance meters, and $100, $200, or $300 for some of these whole house meters. They can be very instructive, but they come at a price. So, we don't yet have the whole house meters on any kind of a loan program because they are a little more expensive and a little more involved. To use them, to make them actually work, you have to get inside your electric panel and hook up clamps that look like this. And generally, if you're handy and competent as an electrician, it's not a big deal. If you're not an electrician, there's some danger, and not everybody should be doing that. So, but here's an example where you put these sensors or current transformers inside the breaker panel. This little thing essentially transmits into the house to this device. A variation on this one where this is transmitting from outside clamped onto the meter to it. So there's some alternatives there, but if you're wanting to really get some numbers on what happens when I turn my 10-foot plasma television on or some such, and everything else in the house, there are some products that are now out there to help make those measurements. And I think that the day is going to dawn with smart meters, so-called, in a few years, where you may get some of that capability just from the utility meter that's on your house. But the old spinning disk meter it's only able to tell you if you're willing to sit there and count pulses as they go around. So you do the survey, you take some measurements if you're that involved. And what can you do? Well, frankly, in a lot of cases, it's pretty darn simple. It's the old turn the lights out when you leave the room sort of thing. What's depicted there is a power strip where if you determine that, well, what's shown here is the heat loss from like a stereo receiver or a DVR type device picture taken with a thermal camera. So this is an indication that when this device is off, it's hot because it's using maybe 30 or 40 watts of energy, like a 30 or 40 watt bulb, all the time. And that's when you want to think about, well, does that actually have to be, if it's plugged into the wall and it's got this standby loss, it's drawing power. But if you unplug it, or if a little more conveniently you plug it into a power strip and then you can just hit the on-off button, then you've effectively stopped that fairly unuseful usage of electricity. And it's back to the question about televisions, that it varies with the television, how much they use, which is where one of these things can help. And one television, one phone charger or whatnot, that's not that much to worry about. It's just that when you do this sort of inventorying and realize, well, I've got power tools in the shop that have battery chargers, and I've got cell phones and so forth and so on, it can add up to where it's the equivalent of having several 100-watt light bulbs running all the time. So and that is a measurable kind of number in dollars and cents on your monthly bill. I just want to draw your attention to the utilities and the city's incentive programs in the area of home efficiency and a diagnostic audit that's tied to some rebates for various things that you might want to do in your home. And then the other category are for the rebates for consumer products, like if you have to replace a refrigerator and you think you're interested in a slightly more efficient one, then there's a rebate to encourage you to do the more efficient, make the more efficient choice. So we've got the logo for the home efficiency program. The important thing to point out to you is that it's sort of a package, and as a package we think it's fairly important, that you can think of a classic example where maybe someone's knocked on your door and said, well, we're a roofing contractor, don't you think you need a new roof? We can do the job for you. Or we are a window contractor, and looks like you could use some new windows. What do you think you're going to get an offer for to improve your home? It'll be roofs, windows, what have you. The city program is, we have contracted with a qualified and certified company to do these energy audits. It's a $60 audit that if you were to purchase that service on your own, it's probably $200 or $300 in terms of what a professional would do to come to your home. They use the infrared camera to find sometimes the hidden leaky spots and maybe places where you wouldn't ever know it, but there was maybe no insulation in the wall, so they could say, well, here's where you might want to, where we could remedy that situation. But they basically take a fairly comprehensive look at what's going on in your house, so that when you get the report of that audit, it's been done independently of any of the contractors, and it's really what that professional thinks are the things you should pay attention to, kind of in priority order. Then you get your audit, you think about whether there are improvement projects, attic insulation or whatever it might be. we've worked with a number of the local and regional contractors to sign them up for this program, and they agree to certain standards of installation and follow-up and quality control. So in the home efficiency program, you do have to get the audit, and you have to work with the large number now of qualified contractors. But we think that's a good thing because they've stepped up to say we'll do the work to a certain standard, and there is a post-evaluation. So as a package, we think that it's safer. It's a safer bet for you if you choose to go ahead with some of these home improvements. And there's quite a range of incentives for the various kinds of things you might want to do with your home, starting with the $60 audit, and in the area of insulating and tightening up your home, several $100s or more is often available, hundreds of dollars depending on the kind of window upgrades you might choose, heating, ventilating, air conditioning upgrades, fairly substantial amounts. And then in many cases, the gentleman mentioned Xcel energy audit or energy rebates. Many cases, you can take our rebate and Xcel's if you're a Xcel gas customer and City Electric customer. And likewise, the Governor's Energy Office here in Colorado has some rebate dollars that can all stack up. So what I'd highlight, though, is even though I'm about to run through just a summary of these various incentives, we hope and we think that this sort of approach still keeps kind of the whole integrated house idea in mind, that when the auditor's in there, he's not just going to suggest the windows, because he's going to say, well, really, the tightness of the home as we've measured it suggests doing some air tightening first, and actually that's going to be the most affordable and the most effective. So hopefully it's leading the homeowner to the most cost-effective things first, and not necessarily high-dollar items. And we think that part of it is the quality control that we also have a contract with the city has a contract with a company to go along and do follow-up checks. Did the insulation contractor said he put in 12 inches of insulation? Did that actually go in? We hope that in most cases that's been checked. So if you think of this schematic of a house, there are incentives for crawl space insulation, basement walls, exterior walls, windows, window films, floor insulation, attic insulation, treatments to cathedral ceilings, whole house ventilation systems, which are sometimes effective, furnace upgrades and boilers, AC and evaporative coolers. In some cases, it's cost-effective to replace only the motor in a furnace. There are newer, higher efficient motors than what was available maybe or commonly used 10 or 15 years ago. And the new motors, without having to change anything else in the furnace system, can use half the electricity of the old device. Ductwork that sometimes needs tightening, ventilation systems that sometimes can improve ventilation issues in a home. All of those things, there are incentives, and with the links that we'll include with tonight's talk that you can go to online, it'll steer you to where to find more information about the home efficiency program. And then just to highlight, as I said, there's also consumer products, washers, refrigerators, efficient lighting, and even in the water conservation area, irrigation audits and sprinkler incentives for higher performance sprinkler heads, things of that sort are available. There's a link online to rebate programs that is a good summary of all the rebates that are available to you. So I had in mind a couple of test cases on, let's say you get a quote for windows that'll save you, the owner will claim, the contractor will claim that it'll save you some amazingly large amount. Is that realistic or not? I'm going to skip a couple of these things it really comes back to what we said at the outset. If it seems like it's too good to be true, it probably is. A combination of measures, in our experience, can easily lead to 10, 20, maybe 30% savings in a home. And actually, if done properly, achieve those kinds of numbers. If somebody says, I'm going to cut your bill in half, or I'm going to cut it by 70%, that's usually going to be a flag to say that they may have a good product, and it may be still a reasonable thing to try, but you're not likely to get the 70% savings that if that's what you're relying on. So, and the crux of it is, it isn't too difficult with proper installation techniques and insulation upgrades, things of that sort, to see meaningful reductions in electric and gas use. It's just be wary of the claims of what may seem like extraordinarily high savings. Or, I mean, it's awful hard with energy measures, and given our you would have to say a relatively low cost of energy here in Colorado compared to other parts of the country. It's awfully hard to get paybacks less than a year on your investment. Now, 1, 2, or 3 years, sometimes you can do that. Some investments, energy investments take a little more. But just be wary if somebody says, it'll pay back in 6 months or something like that. That isn't often the case. We talked about home energy use, and some of the information may be helpful to you to, if just what the monthly patterns are about are a puzzle, or you think something's not right. But there is a larger aspect to how we each use energy in our home, and there are folks involved with the Fort Zed project. Some of you may have heard of that or not heard of it, and that's what we hope to give you a little information about. And as a community initiative, a so-called Community Energy Challenge. Ariana is going to be talking to you about that, and let me just give you some information so you have a little background on how she's coming to Fort Collins and the Home Energy Challenge. She was raised in the East in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and has fond memories of playing in the woods. They have more woods back there than we have, that's for sure. Moved to Fort Collins 4 years ago and was completing a master's in public administration from the University of Delaware. Since moving here, she's been working significantly with the sustainable living initiatives in the community. And in 2009, she was asked to serve on the Fort Zed Task Force. I think if you don't know what Fort Zed is, you're about to find out, I think, what that's all about. She served on the task force as a co-convener where they were trying to develop something like this Community Energy Challenge that you're going to hear about. She currently works with the Redirect Guide and a group called the Atmosphere Conservancy. So let's hear a little bit more about what Fort Zed and the Community Energy Challenge is about.
So thank you for coming out this evening and for this opportunity to speak with you all. It was really wonderful to hear everything that Norm had to say about ways to determine where your energy is going in your home. And I don't know about you, but I'm like having all of these great ideas of things I can do when I get home, and I have a feeling I'm going to start staring at some of those spreadsheets and stuff and start scratching my head and wanting to be able to talk to somebody about it. And that's exactly the kind of opportunity we are providing through the Community Energy Challenge, is bringing community together so that you can talk about this process in your house and not feel alone. So what exactly am I going to be talking about tonight? I'm going to give you an overview of what Fort Zed is, when that got started, and what our vision is for that initiative, what the Community Energy Challenge is, how that supports Fort Zed, ways that you can get involved with it, and the actions that you can take at home. So this is everything we're going to go over. I realize that we have a little less time than we were anticipating, and so I'm going to try and go through things quickly so we can have questions answered at the end. So what is Fort Zed? Fort Zed was initiated in 2007. It was a partnership between University Connections, the Colorado Clean Energy Cluster, and the city of Fort Collins, with this vision of creating a zero energy district in the downtown area of Fort Collins. So that's what ZED in Fort Zed stands for, a zero energy district. And in order to accomplish that, we need to do a couple of things. So, yay, pointers. This is kind of the normal demand growth you can see going up, which Norm also alluded to in his slides. So in order to create a net zero energy district, we need to reduce demand and we need to increase renewable energy generation. And the value in decreasing demand is that it costs significantly less per kilowatt hour to reduce and conserve energy than it does to create new energy. And so this is kind of the overall vision of how we want to accomplish Fort Zed. Of course, there's a lot that needs to go into it, both with new technologies that we're going to need to implement, including smart grid technologies, new renewable energy installations, conservation and efficiency at home, and in businesses. And that's where everyone's collective actions can really contribute to this initiative. So there's a couple of different projects that have been already happening for Fort Zed. One of them you may have heard of is called the Fort Zed Jumpstart Project. It's also referred to as the RDSI project. That stands for Renewable Distributed Systems Integration. We received some funding from the Department of Energy for this, and it's a way for us to study how do we ensure that the energy we need to use in our homes and in our businesses is being supplied when we have energy generated from different sources like wind or solar that aren't always consistent. So we want to make sure that because the sun goes down, you don't lose energy in your house. So that study will help us do that, as well as help us manage reducing peak load, which Norm also talked about a little bit. That's kind of, if you think about a highway, during rush hour, when everyone's coming home and it gets congested, and you want to have the highway be able to work for people that are during rush hour. You need to be able to keep that traffic going at that time. Peak demand and energy is similar, where you have the most energy demand is the peak, and that's usually also after 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. And you need to be able to generate enough energy for that peak demand period. Even though normal energy use might be down lower, peak demand's up higher, and that's what you need to generate for. So if we can reduce peak demand, we can reduce the overall amount of energy we need to generate for our community. So that's some of what RDSI does. There's more technical explanations of that available as well on the Fort Zed website, and I'll show you that. Then there's the Fort Zed Community Energy Challenge, and that's a way for you to get involved, and I'll tell you more about that later. The Smart Grid Investment Grant Project is a project that the city received funding for to upgrade meters to the smart metering technology, and that will allow us to implement the smart grid technology as well, which will help us be able to effectively use energy from different sources, kind of make our grid a two-way street, whereas right now it's more of a one-way street. We have one power plant and all of these end users, and with a distributed energy generation coming from different renewable sources, they'll be spread out in different areas. So your home could have solar panels on it and be generating energy as well as using energy. So any energy that you're generating that you don't need can then go back into the grid system. When we have this kind of technology, it will work more effectively. The Green Restaurant Initiative was established a couple of years ago to help restaurants reduce their energy use. Restaurants are typically a very high energy user in the community, so there's lots of opportunity there. We have, like the most number of restaurants per capita in the world, it feels like sometimes, so definitely a lot of opportunity. And then there was the Public Buildings Project that the city and the county received some funding to improve public buildings, making them more energy efficient, and also installing some renewables on that. So, and just out of curiosity, I meant to ask this earlier, how many of you have heard of Fort Zed before? Cool, it's a good number of you in the room. How many of you have heard of the Fort Zed Community Energy Challenge? Okay, so we have an opportunity to educate you all then. So this is the Fort Zed website. It's fortzed.com. You can find more information about those projects that I outlined. And there's also a really great 13-minute video about the Jumpstart project. that reviews the different sites that are being used and how that project will help us with this. So very informative. Definitely can tell you a little bit more on the technical aspects than I personally can. And then there's just more information about Fort Zed overall, who the partners are, what kinds of benefits for the community are included with this project, and all of that. So I encourage you to check out fortzed.com. And then thought it might be good to kind of take a step and look at where is this Fort Zed community, or Fort Zed district. So roughly, the district is on the west, you see Shields here. On the south is Prospect. East is LeMay, and the north border is Vine. And so it's the downtown area of Fort Collins, including the main campus of CSU. And you see that there's different animal territories. This is all part of the Community Energy Challenge. So we did break up the district into animal territories because we have a little friendly competition going with this. But if you don't live in the district, we still encourage you to play. You're a unicorn. So some people like to say you don't exist. I don't think that's nice. But really, a lot of people kind of get upset if they don't live in the district, and that's not the point. The point isn't to create this exclusive project and initiative for the community and only let it be the downtown area. The point is that we need to have boundaries so that we can measure our success and determine what goals we need to accomplish in order to be successful. But the whole vision and idea of Fort Zed is to take this as kind of a research opportunity for us to demonstrate how you can use an existing community and create a net zero energy district that can be replicable in other communities and be a way for us to demonstrate within our own community what we're capable of. So just because if you don't live in the district doesn't mean you can't get involved. In fact, all of the benefits are available for you as well. So thought might be good to go and start talking about exactly what this Fort Zed Community Energy Challenge is. As Norm said, I started working on this in October of 2009. And the whole idea was to really educate and empower residents to contribute to the Fort Zed initiative. And we really wanted to build community around it. And you see here's some of our volunteer rangers here hanging out. We're getting some work done. And this initiative is brought to you by the Atmosphere Conservancy. We are a nonprofit organization that supports renewable energy in communities. We do installations on other nonprofit organizations, renewable energy installations on nonprofits, and then we also support community programs like the Energy Challenge. So, what are our goals for the Fort Zed Community Energy Challenge? Well, our first goal is to get 1,000 pledges. We're wanting to engage the community in this initiative, and so we want you to pledge your support of it. We also want to recruit and train 100 to 150 volunteer rangers, and our volunteer rangers are helping us with this outreach initiative. And we want to organize community events and neighborhood parties. Really, again, bringing people together for that conversation. So just to give you a little update on our progress, we launched in September at the Sustainable Living Fair. Since then, we've got over 520 pledges, so we're more than halfway there. And we have recruited over 100 volunteers. So definitely getting a great response from the community and wonderful support. So I want to tell you a little bit more about this pledge. We are asking residents to pledge to reduce their home energy use. We provide you with the checklist of actions that you can take at home. Here's the checklist. And the great thing about this opportunity is that when you pledge, you can get entered to win one of our 2 grand prizes. So one of our grand prizes is a Velux sun tunnel with insulation. So it can brighten that dark room in your house or hallway. They're really wonderful. And the other grand prize is a free home energy audit, compliments of the City of Fort Collins, with a $500 gift certificate towards your home improvements. So that's a pretty good prize, I think. But what are these actions that we're asking you to take? So we wanted to give everyone some very specific steps that you can take at home. So be good, children. And we wanted to break it up into 3 different areas because some people, you're just getting started. Maybe you are new to this and you need to start making some behavioral changes at home. You can start turning off your lights when you're leaving the rooms. You can start only using your dishwasher while it's full, changing out to CFLs and things like that. So that's our beginner checklist. Then we have our intermediate checklist, which we have a little bit more costly actions to take. And one of them is the home energy audit, because we do want people to be viewing the house as a system. We also encourage you to recycle your refrigerator, buy Energy Star appliances, and things like that in the intermediate. And then the advanced checklist has things like updating your, what does it have? Let me take a look. Improving your home's insulation, getting new windows, installing even a renewable energy system on your house. So those are a little bit more intensive action items in terms of their costs. They might be a little bit more long-term. And the idea is that you shouldn't jump right to installing a solar thermal system on your house until you've taken care of the things in the beginner and the intermediate checklists first. Because if you were to put a solar installation on your house before you conserve as much energy as possible, again, we go back to you spend a lot more money to create kilowatt hours than you do to save kilowatt hours. So you can end up spending a lot more money on a system on your house. If you do that, then you can, if you conserve as much energy first and then take that step. So we have checklists available for everyone here. That you can go over and get next. There's John, he's my colleague, you can wave. He can help you out with that at the end of the evening. Other ways that you can get involved is volunteering as a ranger. What is a volunteer ranger? Our rangers are helping us spread the word. We ask them all to complete a 2-hour training where we give them the tools and resources to help us complete outreach into the community, and also to be able to act as a resource to their neighbors. So our rangers might not have all of the answers to different questions people have about rebates, incentives, and contractors and things like that. But they have access to those resources to help you connect with them and help you find answers to those kinds of questions, so that when you go home and you scratch your head and you're like, wait, what do I do now? Our rangers are a great place to start, where you can talk to them about those ideas. They also are helping us organize house parties and these community events where at our house parties, people will come together from their neighborhoods. Maybe they'll look at different ways that their neighbor has improved their house, their Energy Star appliances, or their new windows, and that neighbor will talk about their experiences, and they'll just generally exchange some ideas. We're also looking to build community, and again, you can win cool prizes. Our rangers that sign up 25 or more new pledges get entered to win a new Belgium cruiser bike. So there's always something in it, in addition to just the general feel good that you get, as well as the contributions to the community. So, and then you might be thinking about hosting a house party as a way to get involved. We are having a neighborhood-wide, district-wide house parties on May 20th in the evening for the Fort Said Community Energy Challenge. And so that is a great opportunity for us all to be working on this effort together. You can invite your neighbors, show them how you've saved energy, again, share those resources and encourage that open exchange of ideas. I feel like there's a lot of information we can learn from each other, and a lot of creative ideas and ways that we can save energy in our homes that we might learn from talking. Maybe there's some new ideas out there that just haven't been tried yet, and once we get to work together on these, we can come up with those ideas. All of the information about our Fort Said Community Energy Challenge is on our website. So you can go online and you can register your pledge. You can also, when you register your pledge, sign up to be a ranger if you're interested, and you can sign up to host a house party. So all of that's on our website. And just to give you an overview of everything we talked about, we're creating a net zero energy district in downtown Fort Collins, which is a great opportunity for economic development for us, as well as improving our community. And there's ways that you can get involved. There's ways that you can help. You can take the pledge. You can help us spread the word. You can host a house party. You can volunteer as a ranger. And you can find us on Facebook if anyone's on Facebook. We're there, and you can help spread the word that way. Yes?
Can you tell me,
We roughly, based on our knowledge of the community, so we know that this is like a highly industrial area right here. So that's why some of these appear bigger. This is a highly densely populated area. So we didn't have exact data available on that when we were creating these districts, but we roughly were doing that based on our knowledge of how populated those areas are. And then, of course, we kept CSU as CSU. So it's disproportionately larger in population than any of our other districts. Yes. Yes, so whichever territory gets the most pledges will win, and we're going to throw a party for that territory. Right now, we can make that available on our website. It hasn't been to this point, but it's available right now. Our rangers can see who's signed up to take the pledge in their neighborhood, and they can contact their pledgers. But at this point, it's not as easy to find our rangers. So that's something that maybe we should try and work on. Our website's very dynamic. We make changes to it and improvements to it all the time. So that sounds like something that we should do. Yes, you can still win one of our grand prizes. Yeah, and you can still volunteer as well. We definitely have a lot of unicorns. We actually have a significant number of unicorns that have taken the pledge and have signed up and volunteered with us. Yeah, right now we don't have GIS capabilities with our software, so we can't say like, oh, let's map everyone that lives in your neighborhood. But if one day we get that, that would be great. Or if maybe we get an ambitious volunteer that wants to Google map everything, then then maybe we can start showing that kind of dynamic data. But we are a small grassroots outreach initiative with limited funding. So we have to invest our money where we can get the most return out of it. Thank you all for being here tonight.